Part 2. In Part 1, I described Stepan, Varvara, and her son Nikolai. Now let's move to Pyotr. He, contrary to Nikolai, has no problem in separating himself from his actions, the ideas he is spreading. If you want to overcome the whole world, overcome yourself. Maybe Nikolai saw Pyotr and his ideas as morally corrupted as he himself was. That's why he was not interested in joining. Pyotr, the son of Stepan, was discarded and abandoned by his father, and because of it he harbors deep resentment, even hate for his father, and probably as an extension of his father, blames the whole Russian society for his early suffering. You gave me neither food nor drink and sent me by post, and what's more, you have robbed me here. Pyotr is seemingly set on destroying what he hates. At the same time, he is a product of his father, more of a byproduct, a side effect, an unintentional materialization of Stepan's ideas, and also an example of where the liberal progressive ideas can take us when uncontrolled and taken to extremes. There was a preview of it during the French Revolution, but it was the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution that showed the full extent of suicidal violence, blind hate, and resulting suffering. Pyotr, unlike other young characters, was not taught by his father, but ironically he is the best example of continuation of his father's ideology, theory put into practice. He is the perfect storm, more of a storm maker, unintentionally created by his father. He is a troublemaker, steering and motivating others, but he can also be very active and ruthless when somebody gets in the way of his plan, as seen in his conflict with Shatov. He could be considered the main devil or demon of the novel, Russian Lucifer, charismatic, quickly injecting himself and his influence into the society, but the people who have their individual identity more developed can see through him and dislike him. Pyotr executes the ideas of his father, probably thinking the best revenge is to show how failed they are, and as an extension, how useless his father is. Another interesting character is Shatov, who in his childhood was tutored by Stepan, but he's somebody who became disillusioned with the ideology, somebody who grows up and can see how childish his beliefs might have been. It is shown when his wife, pregnant, comes back, and she and the unborn child become his focus. It seems pretty symbolic, going back to the traditional values, having family and taking care of wife and child. Dostoevsky seems to imply happiness is to be found in traditional human values, not in the new nihilistic ideas. Actually, Shatov is an example of a true humanitarian. He sees human life as a miracle that needs to be protected, regardless of who it is. When the child is born, which is not his but Nikolai's, and the labor woman wants to take it away, he says he will never let it go, and she cynically calls him humanitarian. So Shatov's end might be the biggest tragedy of the novel. He's one of the innocent, even unjustifiable victims of revolutions, like semi-retarded Maria, and people who would have been useful to the society, but who were somewhat uselessly sacrificed, individuals like Shatov and Kirillov. Shatov also recognizes the importance of God and Orthodox Church for Russian society, to its health and continuation, and sees the danger in the new revolutionary nihilism because it is built on hate. They'd be the first to be terribly unhappy if Russia could be suddenly reformed, even to suit their own ideas, and became extraordinarily prosperous and happy. They do have no one to hate then, no one to curse, nothing to find fault with. There is nothing in it but an immense animal hatred for Russia, which has eaten into their organism. Perhaps Shatov is not against the progressive ideas, just the way to implement them. He also seems to think Russia is not ready for it, and this in itself can create a disaster. His wife, who was in Switzerland, wants to open a bookbinding business, but he says that people don't read around there. And further, he says that even if people read, Bookbinding is different from reading. People read first for centuries and then they start binding books, implying that Russia has not arrived yet where the West is, and it might be too early for their ideas to be implemented. Maybe that's the place Dostoevsky arrived at after his failed revolutionary activities. Shatov might represent him, his thoughts, more than any other character in the novel, reformed ex-revolutionary, disillusioned with his earlier beliefs. On the other hand, Kirillov symbolizes man without hope. What he sees is the world with hopeless present and future. What is being offered as a future replacement is as hopeless as the present it is trying to destroy and substitute, and for Kirillov, Pyotr is the symbol of it. He wants to kill himself because he realizes he is a man like Pyotr and is revolted by it, doesn't want to share anything with him, even existence on the same planet. And after one of the characters whose actions he respected dies, he says there is no more honest man in the world. And if there was any speckle of hope for Kirillov, now for sure it is all gone. Kirillov is an interesting character with interesting philosophy of life. When all mankind attains happiness, then there will be no more time, for there will be no need of it. A very true thought. You seem to be very happy, Kirillov. Yes, very happy, he answered. Man is unhappy because he doesn't know he is happy. It's only that. That's all. That's all. If anyone finds out, he will become happy at once, that minute. This is not a bad idea. Maybe accepting that you are nothing and have nothing, you can be yourself and know you only have yourself to depend on. And this will make you feel more in control of how you feel, and you will not need anybody else's rules and recipes to be happy or satisfied, since happiness seems more of a momentary state. Because in the long run, those external ideas, being under the influence of others, like the characters in the novel, will disappoint you. Maybe that's what Dostoevsky was aiming at himself, kind of emotional independence. Did he achieve it? I don't know. Maybe he didn't live long enough. Back to Kirillov, he's a symbol of a modern man. Maybe he could be called a cynic, too modern to believe in God, and even too modern to fall for revolutionary ideology. He is a 20th century man, but unfortunately for him, living in the 19th century and wants out. He agrees that God is necessary and must exist, but he says he knows God doesn't exist and cannot exist. I have no higher idea than this belief in God. I have all the history of mankind on my side. Man has done nothing but invent God so as to go on living and not kill himself. So the idea that God doesn't exist is Kirillov's religion, for which he is willing to die. Perhaps it is not God that we need to go on living, but religion, some type of ideology to explain the unexplainable. Great idea, the eternal, infinite idea. It is essential to every man, whoever he may be, to bow down before what is the great idea. Even the stupidest man needs something great. Kirillov sees life as meaningless and thinks suicide is a solution. Some time back I read a book by Romanian thinker Emil Cioran titled The Temptation to Exist, and in it the author implies that in our modern times suicide became as meaningless as life, so many people choose to continue their meaningless existence. But Kirillov, living in the 19th century, still thinks that suicide is a solution, but what stops man from committing it is fear of pain, nothing more. He lives in his own futuristic and utopian world with its own logic and rules. Life is pain, life is terror, and man is unhappy. Now all is pain and terror. Now man loves life because he loves pain and terror, and so they have done according. Life is given now for pain and terror, and that's the deception. Now man is not yet what he will be. There will be a new man, happy and proud, for whom it will be the same to live or not to live. He will be the new man. He who will conquer pain and terror will himself be a god, and this god will not be. Our God or gods will be replaced by ourselves. This is the deep idea of leftist ideology. to create a new utopian religion, but it fails because it would require perfect men, which we are not. Probably it is our imperfection that creates the need for a belief in something greater than us, something perfect. I mentioned before there is a somewhat ambiguous narrator. He is more of a bystander, an observer, but he is part of the plot. He describes events relevant to the plot and has conversations with different characters, which gives them more depth. There are many more characters, but I feel they play a somewhat secondary role in defining the plot. Many of them are examples of individuals who would follow the radical ideas presented in the book, usually younger and liberal, or poor and oppressed, but they seem to really dislike, even hate each other. And on the other side, we have the types who might oppose the new ideas, conservative, religious, happy with the status quo, because many of them are benefiting from it. As I mentioned, Devils is about ideas. On the surface, it deals with social and political questions, but the fundamental idea seems to be more moral and spiritual, the question of relation between morality and religion, or more precisely, belief in God. Can you have one without the other? And this doubt materializes in social problems, and it creates the dilemma of political change. There is also the always present generational gap. The old want to preserve and the young want to destroy, because they want to take the power away from the old. They want the power. It is shown in the hostile exchange between a young girl and an older man. It's not my fault if you are stupid and don't understand even now. You are offended and you are spiteful, and that's what explains all your generation. They are both dismissive of each other, and the usual younger blaming the older for all the problems, which is true, but it is a moot point. The young will become old and will be blamed just like they blamed the sins of the fathers. The young have to pay for them, but they also benefit from the achievement of the older generations. What is done, and it is too late. Perhaps focusing on solutions instead of blaming is more productive, but it feels good and it is easier in the short run to be a victim. And it is human nature to seek what is easier and pleasant. And as usual, the progressive ideas of the young that are supposed to solve the problems created by the old generations are pretty violent. In the book, the solution proposed calls for 100 million heads to be cut off, and the only argument against it is that it might take too long. Interestingly, the Soviet and Chinese communists combined sacrifice about 100 million people for their ideas. In Book 2, Chapter 8, Dostoevsky, through Fyodor, sums up pretty well what the Soviets will be after, somewhat foretelling political actions that led to the great human tragedy. To sum it up, Devils might be Dostoevsky's most difficult read, and maybe even the characters are the most complex of any of his novels. The book can seem pretty confusing because of a lot of details and conversations, some of them boring to read. I can only imagine how difficult it was to write it, to keep any kind of coherent structure and order in the plot. The novel is Dostoevsky's usual questions about God and fate, and his not so favorable opinions about the new political and social ideologies spreading in Russia. He's often called a Slavophile, somebody who appreciates Russia and its Slavic heritage and traditions. His time in exile in Siberia was probably partly responsible for it, but also maturing and seeing the danger of the youthful, unbridled ignorance. Many or most of the main characters in the novel spend time in the West, so Dostoevsky implies it was the Western nihilistic ideas that corrupted them. He mentions Switzerland, probably because a lot of Russian liberals and revolutionaries found refuge there, and that's where they acquired more ideas. It was kind of premonition, since both Lenin and Trotsky spent time there. So the titles Demons or Devils entered Russia from the West in the 19th century and found there a pretty fertile ground to flourish and spread. The novel is about devils or demons we have to deal with as individuals and as society. The more individual demons, the larger is the impact on society. Reading Devils and books like it, the 19th century Russian literature, we can see how unavoidable and imminent the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution was. I have seen a couple of adaptations of the novel, the 1980s French film The Possessed by the great Polish film director Andrzej Wajda with Omar Sharif as Stepan, which I enjoyed very much. I watched a Russian miniseries based on the novel and it was pretty good. I also listened to a radio adaptation of Devils by the French writer Albert Camus. He considered it the best of Dostoevsky's works. I think the novel is somewhat underappreciated, maybe because it is difficult to read and is seen more as a political work, but I think the questions of morality and spirituality are as important in it as in other Dostoevsky's novels. Here they are shown as a political consequence, where in the other novels they materialize more as social problems. Okay, let's talk about the physical book. The book I am holding is a paperback, which I transform into a hardcover leather-bound edition. To make the cover, I use grade A, naturally tan hide I buy from a tanner in North Spain. It is the same leather Louis Vuitton uses to make his bags, so it is top quality. I do all the processing of the leather myself. First, I designed the cover, and for this I used an abstract painting of a somewhat ambiguous individual. He could be a 19th century young Russian nihilist thinking how to force society to accept his ideas. This is the back with the blurb, and inside front cover I printed a quote from the book. If you want to see a more detailed video where I explain how I transform paperback into leather-bound hardcover, click on the link in the description. I will make a maximum of 100 editions of each title. Each one will be numbered and initialed, and the numbers will go in chronological order from 2 up, since number 1 stays with me. The price will be around $100, so if you would like me to make one for you, you can click below on my email and send me a message. I do not guarantee I will do it, since it will depend on the time I have available, access to leather, and if I can get my hands on the copy of the book. Now, if you're not willing to spend the $100, but you still want the book, what you can do is click below on the PayPal link and donate $3 or more to my channel. And for every 100 donations, I will make a lottery and draw one name, and the winner will receive the book. So if you are cheap but feel lucky, this might be the way to do it. Also, your donations give me the extra motivation to make the book reviews, and I appreciate them very much, so thank you in advance. One more thing, when you make your donation, remember to include the title of the book you would like to win. The book itself is beautiful. Visually, it has a very nice texture, it smells great, and the more you handle it, the more beautiful it will become. And it makes a great gift for yourself or somebody who appreciates books. So if you want one, don't snooze, or you might lose. Well, that's it, so let's end it here, and until next time, keep your ear close to the ground and read a book. Adios.